It was the spring of 1980. On a typical Friday night in Madisonville, Louisiana, 16-year-old Debbie Morris was on a date with her boyfriend, Mark Brewster.
It was very typical that we would go get a milkshake at the end of a date and drink it on the riverfront. And we did that particular night. We went to Batto's and we got our milkshakes and we went and sat in his car on the riverfront.
The evening took an unexpected turn when two armed men hijacked Mark's car. Robert Willie got in the driver's seat, Joseph Vaquero got in the back seat and put a gun to Debbie's head. They drove out of town. It was the beginning of what would be a 30-hour ordeal. After 15 minutes of driving, they pistol-whipped Mark and forced him at gunpoint into the trunk of his car. Then Robert Willie shoved Debbie into the back seat and told her to remove her clothes.
And I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't imagine anything worse than what he was going to do to me. And all I could think about was just how awfully disgusting he was and what he was about to do to me.
After Robert Willie raped Debbie, they headed east, away from Madisonville, Louisiana, away from home. As they neared Mobile, Alabama, they stopped and took Mark out of the trunk of the car and put Debbie into the trunk, telling her they were going to release Mark in the woods, then release her further down the road. As they led Mark away, Debbie prayed they would keep their promise.
When I was in the trunk of the car, however, I heard the gunshots. I heard 2 gunshots. And I still didn't know what to think. I could hear Robert Willie and Joseph Vaquero come running back to the car, and they were shrieking and screaming like they were excited, like elated.
When Joseph Vaquero removed Debbie from the trunk, she asked about the gunshots. He told her they had simply fired into the air to scare Mark. Later, she found that they had hung Mark from a tree, stabbed him in the side, cut his throat, burned him with cigarettes, and shot him in the back of the head at close range. They left him for dead, then continued east towards Florida. But realizing they had no drug connections in Florida, they turned around and headed back to Louisiana. They drove down the long, isolated dirt road toward Fricky's Cave, where they probably intended to kill Debbie. But on the way, they passed an old man carrying a fishing pole. It's likely Willie feared the old man would overhear the murder. So after he raped Debbie again, they left Fricky's Cave and went to drug dealer Tommy Holden's trailer. There, Debbie was raped yet again, this time by Joe Vaquero. After Vaquero violated her, Debbie was tied up so the kidnappers could sleep. In the early hours of Sunday morning, drug dealer Tommy Holden sobered up enough to realize Debbie was underage and being held against her will. He demanded she be taken home. Robert Willie initially agreed, but insisted they first destroy the hijacked vehicle.
At this point, Robert Willie started saying that he didn't want to let me go. And when Tommy Holden was frustrated, he walked back over to the car and I asked him about it. I said, they don't want to let me go, do they? And he admitted that they didn't want to let me go. And I said, they want to kill me, don't they? And he said, yes, that's what they're talking about. And I heard Robert Willie say that they should just burn me up in the trunk of the car. I was just about to take off running when Robert Willie said, fine, we'll take her home. We'll just take her home. We're making a mistake, but we'll just take her home. And they did. As I was getting out of the car, and they were actually letting me out of the car, I thought that they were either going to shoot me or that they were going to run me over with the car. I really didn't think that they were going to let me go. And by that time, I couldn't even run. I just was willing to let whatever was going to happen, happen. And when they drove off, I just couldn't believe it. My heart just started pounding. And I just started running.
When you've been hurt that deeply, how can you possibly forgive?